What's up, apes? Badass Trader here, and today I decided I was going to do a little response video to AMC Biggums YouTube video about Apollo and Aron's connections to them. Now this isn't a whole sell all your AMC shares and get out while you can kind of video. I don't believe that. People are entitled to their own investment decisions and everything like that. I'm not anti AMC. I am all in on GME. That's me, that's my opinion. But at the same time, I do think there's a lot of fishiness going on around Aron and his connections to Apollo. So while AMC and the stock and the company, whether you love it or not, that's your own decision. There are definitely some questions to be answered here in relation to Aron, and I'm going to give a shout out to AMC Biggums. Fair play to you for actually starting the conversation about Apollo and his connections to Aron. But at the same time, you kind of skipped over a lot of the history that's there and kind of just stated it as, oh, Aron has a 20% interest in Philadelphia 76ers, which is also run by Josh Harris, who is the co-founder of Apollo. But the connections to Apollo go a lot further back than that, and there is a pattern of behavior that exists between Aron and Apollo. So I did write a whole DD on this. And I suppose a lot of the AMC community has dismissed it as FUD, but not all FUD is bad. If something is genuine and needs to be addressed, I think it should be addressed, whether it creates fear, uncertainty, or demand. And this is one of those things, in my opinion, because there's a pattern of behavior here from Aron that goes way back, back into the 90s. So real quick, look, the point of, I'll leave the link to the DD in the description below, but the point of the DD isn't just about AMC. It's about like what AMC Biggums is talking about in terms of private equity companies and their hostile takeovers. And again, fair play for addressing this. It is a pattern out there that exists. This is their playbook on how they go in and take over companies, and their hostile takeover playbook, basically, right? So that's what the kind of DD is about. But there's a pattern there that exists with Aron that the AMC community focused on within the DD, rather than looking at the bigger picture and then dismiss it as FUD. And like, this has been peer reviewed. I mean, the overall upvotes and comments across this 4 series DD is quite high. So a lot of people have looked at this and have found flaws in it too, and I'll be the first to admit when there are flaws, and I've corrected the ones that have been in there. But a lot of the core concept in relation to private equity and in relation to Aron has not been disproved. Now there is one point again that AMC Biggums does address, that could potentially signal that Aron isn't working in line with Apollo, and we'll address that too. And if he's not, it's great, but at the same time, guys, there are questions here that need to be answered, in my personal opinion. So going back to, I'm not going to give you the whole history. Look, you can read the DD if you want to go into it in more detail. But basically, in 1996, Aron was actually hired by Apollo as the CEO to oversee their investment in Vail Resorts. There is a source for this to state that they were specifically hired by Apollo, and you can go and check that out yourselves. All of this stuff has been verified and peer reviewed. So nothing here is hearsay or anything. It is all fact. This is what happened. Some of it has been lightly covered up or narratives spun around it. I suppose those aspects are speculation, but there's basis for the speculation as well, which I've highlighted throughout the DD. So basically, in 1996, he was hired by Apollo to oversee their investment in Vail Resorts. They basically bought up Vail Resorts. parent company's bad debt, which was created by the junk bonds sold to them by Michael Milken. So they bought it up, they took over the company after it went into bankruptcy, and they brought it public and then brought in Aron to oversee everything. Now, the kind of reports that came out of that time is that Aron did a great job, Adam did a great job, Aron, and everybody was happy and everything went well, and he's a great CEO and a great leader and all of that. But when you look at things in a bit more detail and the impact on what he did and how he did it, like, I mean, it's they call it a vulture fund for a reason. Like, they tore apart the Vail community, and I've had multiple people who've reached out to me from the Vail community, so I'm not one to speak for them, and like, there's a post on Superstonk as well, telling some of those stories about how things have changed because of what went on at Vail Resorts. But basically, it was profit at all costs. You know, they even went so far as creating credit cards so that visitors would only spend the money within resort controlled facilities and never go down into the town. And basically all of that tourist money for the local businesses dried up. Many businesses went out of business, and so on and so forth. And while some of you may see this as, you know, good business, like there's a kind of a morality to it, and how Aron treated people and how he reacted to people. Like, there's stories about him, you know, parking in disabled spots and all of this kind of stuff, and you know, like, some of that's kind of meh. Like, I mean, so what? Somebody did something bad in the past, like, so what, you know? But I mean, when there's a pattern of it and it all ties into private equity and making money for private equity is when it becomes a little bit concerning. So you can have a look at this yourself, and I encourage AMC Biggums to do it as well, because you really did brush over the history between Apollo, and it's good that you have highlighted Apollo as a potential threat to AMC. And that's the basis of this, is not to say, oh, you know, Aron's the devil or AMC is a distraction or any of that other stuff, right? It's just to do some due diligence on this, and you know, bring these questions to him as well. Like, I understand there's a lot of YouTubers in the AMC community that have direct contact with Aron. I don't know who, but I have heard that some of them do, so it might be worth bringing this to them. And, you know, like, don't just say, you know, what's the story with Apollo. Like, actually dig into this, actually bring information to him, you know. So there's a whole bit there about Vail Resorts, and how, you know, he was trying to instill in the community as well that, you know, he was there for the long term, and like, that was a year before, or right around the time when Apollo actually got rid of their position in Vail and moved on, which was a year before Aron did the same thing. So he bought his house there, saying, oh, he's here for the long term. Then he sold all the shares. Again, a pattern of selling all the shares, and then moved on to go actually work directly for Apollo, which he spent 10 years doing as well. So it's not just that, oh, he's got a connection with the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, this guy's got decades of history with Apollo, including working directly for them. So there's a whole lot of sources in here as well about how he reacted, how people reacted, some of the stories of the locals, and how his actions at profit at all costs impacted them. And I went into the annual reports and stuff like that, and you know, just a whole load of stuff in here that goes into detail. But basically, he was working for Apollo from the inside to oversee their investment and their control of that company. And that's the start. Obviously, I put in little kitten breaks here and puppy breaks because this stuff is painful to read sometimes. So before that, you know, he worked for Norwegian Cruise Lines, as some of you will know. Again, if you kind of look at you know, what people say about his time at Norwegian, is, oh, he was a great leader, he was a CEO and did all this great stuff and blah blah blah, right? But when you actually dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that the company didn't do so well under Adam Aron, and he sold off a lot of their assets. They struggled to make profit. So it was apparently an experiment in an attempt to bring American leadership to the company. He couldn't be reached for comment and struggled to make a profit. The holding company was disbanded. So 2 of the cruise lines were shut down, and all of this stuff right now. If you try to find these articles, like I've scoured the fucking internet for this, going through the Wayback Machine, like most of the records of this article when he announced that he was quitting, by the way, are gone. Like, so it's as if they had, some media team who went in and, cleared the web of this stuff. But there's still evidence out there, and I've linked it in there as well. So part 2 then. Just a little bit more about Norwegian. So Starwood Hotels then as well. So Starwood Hotels didn't actually have that direct connection to Apollo, so there's a bit of speculation in there, but at the time they were rumored to be bought out just when Adam Aron joined them, and as they were rumored to be bought out, they were actually taken over by Marriott instead. So speculation would say in my head that Apollo were trying to take them over, and they just got outbid for it despite having an inside man in there. So as soon as they were taken over, Adam Aron was gone again. So he went in and oversaw that, and then as soon as Marriott took over, they got rid of him. So yeah, and then he spent 10 years as well at Apollo working directly for them. So yeah, and then I kind of go into a bit of background on Apollo and stuff like that, but there's a bit more to this, right? So the whole theory about the connections that exist there, so including with Norwegian Cruise Lines, Adam Aron stayed on the board with Norwegian Cruise Lines, and after selling off chunks of it and not making money and stuff like that, which would obviously mean the stock price would go down, he stayed on the board, and then in partnership with his own consulting company, facilitated the hostile takeover of Norwegian Cruise Lines, who were acquired by Apollo. So he remained on the board after they were acquired by Apollo. He's still on the board today, despite them being owned by Apollo. And then obviously the 76ers as well. Like, he didn't just own 20% of them, he was brought in to manage them as well in partnership with Josh Harris. So again, and here's where things get interesting, right? So when you look at AMC then, so you all should know that Apollo did own AMC in total when it was private, and obviously then the buyout happened, they went public, and Apollo didn't own them anymore. So they had co-founders of Apollo were on the board in AMC and everything like that, but they continued to issue debt to Apollo. So Apollo still owned debt in AMC, so it's still ripe for a hostile takeover for them from a private equity standpoint, at least, right? They have a vested interest in AMC. So at the time that Adam Aron was brought in as CEO, right, he was still on the board with Norwegian. He was just after his stint at Starwood Hotels, which prior to that he had spent 10 years directly working for Apollo. Apollo previously owned AMC. They had previous co-founders of Apollo on the board, and he was still involved in management at Philadelphia 76ers, all at the time of being hired as CEO for AMC, despite all the potential conflicts of interest with Apollo owning debt in there and being a lead creditor as well, not just a small amount of debt. And then when he got into as CEO in AMC, this is a little bit of speculation, but the company took on more and more debt. I'm speculating that a lot of that, or a portion of that, would have went to Apollo, considering that Apollo were still a lead creditor by 2020. And some of you may say, oh well, the debt came from the COVID-19 and all that, but it's actually incorrect, and that's a common misconception. So in 2019 they took on 5 billion in debt. In 2020 through COVID they took on 1 billion in debt. So they actually took on more debt prior to COVID-19, and the logic of that debt was buying up some new theaters, getting rid of some ones that weren't profitable, and upgrading all the chairs to leather recliners, and upgrading the concessions and snacks. And the goal for that 5 billion in debt was to have a 33% increase in ticket attendance revenues. And in 2019, the year that they took on all that debt and made all those renovations, they actually lost money in attendance. So that 33% growth didn't happen, and then it went into COVID after that. So whether it would have happened medium to long term, obviously we can't tell because of COVID. But it definitely wasn't on track to be the profitable expenditure that they had planned it to be. So it just kind of smells a bit like mismanagement to me. And I'm happy for you guys to go in and dig through this and poke holes and find problems with what I'm saying. But there's too many like coincidences for it to be nothing. And again, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But if you can't find holes in this, like, why not ask the question of him? Why not demand for answers? If it was me in your guys' position, if this was in GameStop, if Ryan Cohen was, working with some vulture fund, I definitely want to, get a bit more clarity around the issue. So anyway, going on to the whole point about, but they didn't go with Apollo pushing them into bankruptcy. So Adam Aron really saved the company and isn't actually working with Apollo. So despite the decades-long track record of actually working with and for Apollo, I would question that statement personally. It's a personal opinion and it is speculative, but I would question that just based on the track record and to where his loyalties lie. So many people say, okay, he didn't go with them, so he screwed over Apollo, so his loyalties lie with the apes, right? But everything changed, right? In a normal private equity takeover, they want to push them into bankruptcy and go to bankruptcy court and pull out all the assets and get as much revenue out as possible, right? So that would have been the original plan. But everything changed when apes joined the party, so to speak, right? And that would have been in January of 2021 with the mini sneeze that did occur right around when Adam Aron changed his deal and went with whatever the other company was instead of Apollo, right? So, but if you look at it from Apollo's perspective, their actual goal may have changed as well, given all of this new interest in AMC from the apes and the increase in share price, right? So that would have potentially had a shifting in the goalposts for Apollo, and it may have been Apollo's in Apollo's best interest to actually stay within the company, seeing that they can now unload more debt into the company. They can actually get their debt back out. They can, there's 100 ways that these guys make money from their ownership and their control of these companies, and a debtor or a creditor to a company can have control within a company as well, because the company is obligated to pay back their debt, so they tend to have sway within the company, especially if you have an inside man, which is what I'm proposing that Adam Aron is for Apollo. And whether it was a case of he's not anymore, but he used to be in the past, he definitely was in the past, because he was hired, and there's records of him being hired by Apollo, both at Vail, lesser at Norwegian, though it still ended up he still ended up facilitating that hostile takeover at Norwegian. And at the time of getting the job at AMC, he was a lot more connected than just having the 20% ownership in Philadelphia 76ers. So my suggestion is, take a look at this, DD. See if you can figure some of this stuff out. If you can poke holes in it, and if you think I'm wrong in something, feel free to let me know. I do go into GameStop and stuff here as well, and some of the other companies that follow the private equity hostile takeover formula. But AMC is a big part of this, and Adam Aron's connections to Apollo, to me, right, raise red flags. And for you guys in the AMC community, I'm not saying, you know, turn against Adam Aron. I'm not saying turn against your investment in AMC, but at the same time, right, having an inside man in here, you know, has the potential to, like, okay, Apollo, think about where loyalties lie, right? If Adam Aron is an inside man, his loyalties will lie with Apollo, right? If that's the case, and you can go and figure out and talk, you know, ask him the questions, demand the answers, and see if you get, you know, something that's a reasonable explanation, right? But if it is the case that he's an inside man and his loyalties lie with Apollo, Apollo's loyalties won't lie with the shareholders, right? They lie with profits and people and companies that they have a long-term relationship, including hedge funds, right? So if the whole private equity formula included, you know, using hedge funds to short, naked short, and, you know, drive a company into the ground to make it cheap for private equity to come and take it over, then Apollo's loyalties will lie with maintaining that business relationship with hedge funds. So do you think they're going to screw over, you know, some hedge funds that have been helping them? You know, this is all obviously speculation too. There's no evidence of this, even though there's close ties between them, and I go into that in the DD as well, as does AMC Biggums in his video, in terms of the relationship between Apollo and hedge funds. But say that was the case, that, you know, hedge funds and market makers short the crap out of companies like Toys R Us to drive the price into the ground. And by the way, there's all connections to inside men in these companies as well. Not always Apollo, there's, you know, other private equity companies out there that do this as well. So the hedge funds and market makers short the companies into the ground, along come the private equity companies, buy them up for pennies on the dollar, load them up with debt, you know, pull every strand of profit out of the company that they can before pushing them into bankruptcy and getting rid of everything. You know, like, that's big money business. I mean, you talk about assets under management, what's Citadel assets under management, 40-50 billion or something. You look at I know they have more offshore and everything like that, but if you look at Apollo, who isn't even the biggest private equity company, they 455 billion as of 2020 assets under management, and again, not including offshore funds or anything like that, right? So 455 billion for Apollo versus 35 billion at Citadel. Like, who's the giant in this room? Who's the elephant in this room? You know, it's the private equity companies. It's big money that they're making from this. So you don't think they have a vested interest, you know, in planting inside men, you know, or women at companies that they're trying to, you know, execute these hostile takeovers on, to oversee the amount of money and the amount of debt and investment that are going into this strategy? Like, too much here, guys, really, you know, to turn a blind eye to and just dismiss it as FUD, in my opinion. Like, it's up to you. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, chase down Adam Aron. It's not up to me. It's up to you guys to do this. You guys have the connections to him. You guys have the investment in the company. You guys want to see the company prosper in the future. You know, and if there's even like, what's the Batman saying about Superman? If there's even a 1% chance that we think he's our enemy, we have to consider it an absolute certainty. Whatever that quote is. Like, apply that to Adam Aron. Even if it's a 1% chance that he's an inside man and working for Apollo, the least you can do is you know, go out and demand answers for this. See what he has to say. See, is there a reasonable explanation, and see if you believe him. I really hope you do, guys. and I really hope I'm wrong and nobody gets burned by this. I'm not saying sell AMC. I'm just saying ask the questions. That's it. Have a good day. Talk to you soon. This is Badass Trader. Follow on Twitter at Badass Trader 69.